Hi, this is Ashley Schmidt, and I am going to be talking about tips for applications for United States Service Academies. And this is just one of the series. We're going to talk specifically about essays today and how to write great and fabulous essays, tips and tricks and all that sort of thing. But this is just one of a series. So if you haven't seen any of my other YouTube videos, check out my YouTube channel and look at the rest of the videos in this series and the rest of the videos on my channel. They're all focused on service academies. So I hope this is helpful to you, and we'll get right into it. So my first, I gotta get the PowerPoint to work there. There we go. Application pieces, right? So this is kind of, if you've seen any of my other videos, this is kind of the template of the application pieces. This time we're specifically talking about essays, and we'll get right into that. Okay, so essays. I know if you've seen some of my videos, you may have seen this slide, but it's super important. Follow the directions. Read the directions all the way through. Don't overthink it. And word count and character count. You have to follow those. I know in some of the online forums and forms you fill out that it won't let you paste anything extra, or write anything extra if you're copying and pasting, which you should definitely write it in a word processor. Then it won't let you add things. But that's also important to note the character count and word count on your applications for anything that isn't your nomination essays. They might also have a character or word count, and you want to make sure you are under that, or within, if they have a range like 300 to 500, make sure you're at least at 301. All right? Follow the directions. Yes, I want to repeat that again. Follow the directions. If it says submit one essay, submit one essay. Or if it says to do a certain thing or whatever the question is, actually answer the question. I can't tell you how many times I've read essays that the student didn't actually answer the question that was asked. So make sure you answer the question and follow the directions. All right, next, word processor, right? Use a word processor. Use Word. Use Google Docs. Use whatever it is you have, and make sure it gets spell checked and grammar checked. Grammarly is really awesome. It is a free, if you do it on the online site or you install it, you can go to grammarly.com, you can copy and paste things, and Grammarly is great for just reading through and giving you some suggestions of things that you're like, oh, is that what I'm supposed to change, or is that the way you're supposed to write that? That's a great program. But at least spell check it, grammar check it, word count, word character count, check it, right? You want to copy and paste it into the online form. There's a few reasons. One, you're going to probably reuse parts of your essay, and so if you've written it in a word processor, then you have it. If you just wrote it in the online form and then submitted it, it's gone, so you can't get to it. So write it in Word, write it in some processing program, spell check, edit, do all those sorts of things. All right, don't just submit it. All right, spell check and grammar check too. Yes, I'm gonna foot stomp them because I can't tell you how many students don't actually do that, and do it right before you turn it in too. Like, even if you've done it, do it all again, because you might have changed one thing and you missed a space, and so two words are connected, or just do it right before you submit it. All right, have someone else read it. No matter how many times you read it, there will still be errors because you know what it's supposed to say in your head, so you will skip over the errors. And also, another reason is you know what you're trying to communicate, but because it's in your head, the reader doesn't know exactly what you're saying. So when someone else reads it, they might be like, I don't understand what you mean by this sentence. And you know what it means because you have all those words and thoughts in your head, and so it makes sense to you. But I can't tell you how many times I've read essays for students, and they just don't make sense to me as the reader. I can guess what they mean, but I'm not sure. So don't make your reader guess. Don't make your reader overthink it. Don't make your reader have to connect, instead of 1, 2, 3 dots, 1 to 7. They just won't see it. And they're not going to spend the time, because they have 1,000 essays to read. They're not going to spend time contemplating yours and trying to figure it out. So have somebody else read it, and they can help you with that. All right, topics to avoid. Okay, so here's kind of my list of topics to avoid. A list. Okay, if you're just going to list a bunch of your achievements and activities, don't. Do not. That is not an essay. That is not even an interesting essay to read. You may think you're like, oh, look at all these wonderful things. They have your resume. They do not need you to re-list all the cool things you do in an essay. They have your resume. Leave it at that. Don't use slang, all right? I'm not saying don't use don't is a contraction. Don't is a contraction, not slang. But don't use words that the reader might not be aware of. If you're going to use an acronym, like, for example, all the service academies, right? USAFA, USNA, USMA, that's fine because they've seen those acronyms. But any other acronyms that are maybe familiar to you but not to them, you're going to have to at least spell out once, and then you put parentheses around it. So for, let's do United States Air Force Academy, right? So United States Air Force Academy, and then parenthesis, capital U, capital S, A, F, A, close parenthesis, right? That one you wouldn't have to use, put that in because it is familiar to the reader. But anything else is probably not going to be familiar to the reader, so you should definitely spell that out if you're going to repetitively use it. In general, I would avoid acronyms, but sometimes it is helpful. So don't use slang. All right, sad topics like death, divorce, or loss. I know the reason that you want to avoid these topics is usually it is very hard to talk about those topics in a way that is interesting and useful to the reader. You don't just want the reader to read your essay and be sad or upset. If you're going to mention something like death, divorce, or loss, and you just mention it, and it's just a mention to describe something, then that's okay. But if your whole essay is about that, you can write a good one, but it's hard to write a good one. I will say that. I have read really good essays that were on this topic, but it is a hard thing to do for most students. It takes a lot of skill and thought, and then a lot of other people reading it to see if your message came through loud and clear versus just being overwhelmed by the sadness of the essay. So I would avoid it. You probably have something better to talk about. Sports. Please, 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 please do not write about your injury that you overcame. I know everybody wants to do it, but everyone does it, and that's the problem. Avoid writing about sports if you can. Now, there are good ways to talk about sports, and we'll talk about that in the topics to avoid. So you don't have to throw out sports completely, but don't talk about your injury that you overcame, or heaven forbid, don't talk about how you broke your arm during the middle of your football game, but yet you toughed it out and kept going until the end of the game. Okay? An adult just thinks you're stupid. They say, why on earth would you keep going with a broken arm? You could have hurt yourself and never been able to get into an academy, right? No. Don't write about it. You may have done it, but don't write about it, okay? Find something else. You have better topics. Comparisons. Never compare yourself to somebody else, okay? Never compare yourself to something else. Comparisons make you either sound sad or it makes you sound like you're bragging. So just avoid comparisons of all kinds. Broad topics to include your Eagle Scout project, mission trip, or camps. I know it's a topic and everyone loves to talk about it, but everyone loves to talk about it. Again, you can use experiences from these events, but you do not want to generalize the experience and just say, I did this great Eagle Scout project, blah, blah, blah. You have to be more specific than that, and we'll talk about that in the things to talk about. Don't talk about your trip to visit the academy. Now, you can mention your trip to visit the academy as part of one line, but don't make it your entire essay, okay? It's not all that interesting to read, and it's not very telling or tells the reader anything about you. Don't have rude or unprofessionally expressed opinions. Yes, students write about those. Don't do it. Don't be that student. Just avoid these topics. You may have an opinion. You may want to express yourself, but don't do it in your college essay. You want to get in, not offend the person reading it. So avoid that. Sensitive topics. Yet again, you don't want to make someone uncomfortable reading your essay. So if it's a sensitive topic, there are ways to talk about it, but yet again, it's hard to do without making the reader feel uncomfortable. You don't want the reader to look at your file and know that they're comfortable reading what you wrote, right? So don't do that. Just, there's so many things you can talk about. Avoid sensitive topics. Illegal activities. Yes, you would be surprised when students write about. Don't write about any of your illegal activities. Hopefully you don't have any illegal activities, but don't write about them in an essay. Topics to consider. Leadership, and there's a reason this is highlighted. Any sorts of club, sport, CAP, JRTC, extracurricular, there's a million things you can show leadership. You could have formed your own National Honor Society. You could have formed your own club at your school. You could have taken over the chess club. You could have taken a club that you had that only had 5 members and made it more exciting and more popular and do things so that you had 100 members or even 30 members versus 5. Those are the types of things you can talk about. Leadership is one of the best topics to talk about. And like I said, you remember I said you can talk about sports? This is a place you can talk about sports. Don't just talk about that you play sports and that you're the captain of the football team or whatever. Talk about, let's say you're a cross-country runner and you're the captain, or maybe you're not even the captain of the cross-country runner. You're just a senior. And you make sure that every single freshman finishes a run. You go back for them, you cheer for them. That is leadership. That is helping others get to the goal, right? They're finishing the race. They may not be the fastest, but if they're a freshman, they have years to grow. They may be the best person on the team by their senior year. And if you just said, oh, forget about the freshman, you're doing your school and you're doing your team a disservice. So if you're going to write about sports, you're going to write about your Eagle Scout or field or camp or anything of those big moments, talk about a time you led that group. Talk about a time you did something to improve that group, to inspire them. All right, so if you've organized an activity or event, yet again, this kind of falls under that leadership aspect. If you've organized or created something, like I said, you created NHS at your school, talk about all the little tasks that got you to that point. And you don't have to talk about them in super detail, but give enough detail that the listener or reader can actually understand what you accomplished. Not, I did stuff and things. Never write, I did lots of things. I've seen it too many times. Or I did a lot of work. What work? That's the question I always ask when I see something like that. It was a lot of work to do this. Okay, great. What work did you do? I have no idea as the reader. You know, because you did it, but me, I don't know as the reader. Any sort of character building experience. That's another great thing to talk about. Just anything that's built you as a person, who has changed your life point of view, kind of those aha moments. You realized something about the world. Those can be great experiences to write about. Specific moments for learning experiences during, the Eagle Scout mission trips or camps. So if you created, let's say, Eagle Scout, right? Well, I know Eagle Scout is a topic. And you can talk about it, but you don't want to talk about it, I just made this thing. You want to say, okay, I learned a lot about getting a team to work together during my Eagle Scouts. So you could talk about how you formed this project and you had a really hard time recruiting people for your project. And so you tried the tips everyone gave you, just asking the rest of your scouts or whatever, and it just wasn't working for you. So you decided to, ask around and say, okay, what other ideas, things I could do to get more people involved? And people suggested, hey, post it on the neighborhood social media group, post it as flyers on the school. Why don't you get that club over there involved because they have an interest in it? See if you can get them to volunteer. So you could write about all the creative and different ways you got people to come to your Eagle Scout trip, and that you learned a lot about communication and forming a team and not giving up when at first you didn't find enough people. So those can be the kind of things you can talk about. Now, a time you overcame peer pressure. That is another great thing that you can talk about, because peer pressure, academies are really concerned with integrity and the ability to do the right thing no matter what other people will think or say about you, right? So if you have times that you've overcome peer pressure, everyone was drinking at an event and you said, you know, no, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving that party. And maybe it depends. So some of these, maybe that wasn't the best example, but there are experiences where, like, okay, here's a great example. If you are taking a test and the teacher leaves the room, and people, your friends are like, hey, the answers to the answers are on the teacher's desk. So why don't you go and just grab the answers and read them out to us, right? That's peer pressure. And if you just say, no, I don't do that, and you shouldn't either, that's resisting peer pressure. So that might be a great example. All right, moments you've displayed integrity. Yet again, I just gave you that example of when your friends ask you, hey, get the answers off the teacher's desk, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that, and you shouldn't either, then, you know, you've definitely displayed integrity. So those could be great examples as well. Events that show off your best qualities. So let's say you're a great problem solver, you're great at organization, you're great at communication. So think of times that you have displayed and shown those qualities that you think are your best, and those can be good topics for essays as well. All right, hints. So this is just quick. Always be positive. Don't be negative. Nobody wants to read your sad, sad, sad story. Yet again, even if you're talking about, I said don't talk about sad topics, because it's hard to be positive about a sad topic. You want to be positive. You can mention a sad topic, and then go and tell what you learned from that topic, how you grew, how that event that you mentioned and didn't talk about in detail has changed your life and how you've used it to make yourself a better person. That's okay, right? So be positive. Even if you're mentioning something sad, you always have to go on the positive side. What did you learn from it? What did you gain from the experience? What life lessons do you now have because of that experience? Don't compare yourself to others. I kind of talked about comparisons, but do not compare yourself to others. Don't say that, like with cross country, right? Say, even if you're not the captain of the cross country team, don't say, the captain of the cross country team is worthless, so I took it on I took it on myself to help the freshmen. Don't say that. Just say, I saw that the freshman needed some help and I went and did it, right? You don't have to put somebody else down to look like a good person. You can just be a good person. You don't have to put others down. And that's better. Just state what you did in a positive manner and don't worry about what others. Now, if you're talking about a conflict, say, hey, I disagreed with this other person. That's fine. You can say we disagreed and then talk about how you solved that disagreement. That's a different thing. You're not putting someone down. You're just stating that there was a disagreement and that you talk about the ways and methods you helped resolve that solution, that conversation, argument, whatever it was. Again, hints, tell your life lesson. Make sure you tell what you've learned from any experience. Another one is, how can your skills and character traits serve others? So remember, a lot of times they want to know, how can you make the Service Academy better? So how can your skills fit into what an academy does? And try and highlight that. Again, leadership, leadership, leadership. You do not need to be the leader. Just in that example of the cross country, right? You don't have to be the team captain to help the freshmen and build up the team. You just have to be someone who's willing to help. So a leader is someone who motivates or inspires others towards a common goal. Anyone on the cross-country team can do that. Even a freshman can lead the other freshmen, right? They might be the leader of the freshmen, but they're a leader. They have the skills to help motivate and inspire others towards, cross-country, the finish line, right? They're trying to get everyone across the finish line because that first year, it's just about learning how to be a cross-country runner. And by their senior year, they might be a fantastic runner, but you have to get everybody to the finish line so that they see that they can accomplish it, so that they see they can get better. So that's kind of hints and tips. Let's see. All right. I hope this was helpful on making your dreams come true to go to a service academy. And next time, we're going to talk about interviews, but if you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, like, share with your friends, anyone you know who wants to go to a service academy. Thanks so much.
Want to impress academy admissions? Want to get that nomination? Then this is the workbook for you. Grab your step-by-step guide on Amazon today. Use the link below or search on Amazon for Service Academy admissions.